Hi everyone, it's Amy with myths and legends from all over the world. Today we're going to go to a new country, Japan, and I have chosen probably the most famous story from Japan, Yuki Onna. In English it's Snow Woman, and I think you know this story already, but you've probably never heard it in English. So that's the story today. First, please listen to the listening questions and write them down in your notebook. Okay? Number 1. What jobs did Mosaku and Minokichi have? Number 2. Why did they stay at the ferryman's hut? Number 3. Who comes into the hut? What does she do to Mosaku? And what does she say to Minokichi? Number 4. Who does Minokichi meet while on his way home? And what does he think about her? And last one, number 5. In the end, what happens between Oyuki and Minokichi? Okay, so listen to the vocabulary and the story and then go ahead and answer the questions. Here's the vocabulary. Woodcutter, a person who chops down trees and cuts wood as a job. The woodcutter was very tall with big arm muscles. Apprentice, someone who works for an expert in order to learn a trade. The master woodcutter taught his apprentice all parts of the job. Ferry, a boat that transports people across water. To get to the island, you need to take the local ferry. Blow, to be storming. The wind blew in from the south. Ferryman, the person who controls the ferry. Let's ask the ferryman what time the ferry will arrive at the dock. Tatami, straw mat used in Japanese houses. Japanese like to take naps on their tatami floor. Hut, a very small and poor-looking house. The fishermen lived in a hut by the river. Awful, terrible, extreme. The big dog let out an awful sound when he saw another animal. Shiver, to shake from the cold. I shivered in the cold morning air. Bend, to bend one's back forward from the waist. The woman bent over to pet the small puppy. Utter, to make a sound. Try not to utter a sound. There's a thief in our house. Dawn, the first light of day. I like to sleep until noon on weekends, but my boyfriend gets up at dawn. Promptly, quickly, in a punctual manner. My email was responded to promptly. Distant, far apart in relationship. Nina is my distant cousin, so we don't see each other a lot. Hesitation, the act of pausing uncertainly. The man showed hesitation before entering the dark and scary forest. Fancy, to have a special liking for. I took a fancy to chocolate cookies as soon as I tasted one. Praise, to express approval for. The teacher praised her hard-working student. Sew, do needlework, create clothes by cloth. Could you sew me a dress for the big party? I have nothing nice to wear. Melt, to become soft or liquid. Her ice cream melted in the hot sunlight. Mist, a thin fog. You can see mist on the top of these mountains. In the village of Musashi Province, there lived 2 woodcutters, Mosaku and Minokichi. At the time of which I am speaking, Mosaku was an old man, and Minokichi, his apprentice, was a young man of 18 years. Every day they went together to a forest about 5 miles from their village. On the way to that forest there is a wide river and a ferry boat to cross it. Several times a bridge was built where the ferry is, but the bridge was carried away each time a flood came. No common bridge can survive the great floods in that area. Mosaku and Minokichi were on their way home one very cold evening when a great snowstorm blew in. They reached the ferry and found that the ferryman had left, leaving his boat on the other side of the river. It was no day for swimming, and the woodcutters took shelter in the ferryman's house, thinking themselves lucky to find any shelter at all. There was no place in which to make a fire, It was only a two-tatami hut with a single door but no window. Mosaku and Minokichi locked the door and lay down to rest, with their straw raincoats over them. At first they did not feel very cold, and they thought that the storm would soon be over. The old man almost immediately fell asleep, but the boy, Minokichi, lay awake a long time, listening to the awful wind and the continual sound of the snow against the door. The river was so loud, and the house made horrible sounds like it was alive. It was a terrible storm, and the air was becoming colder and colder. Minokichi shivered under his raincoat, but, in spite of the cold, he too fell asleep. He was awakened by a feeling of snow on his face. The door of the hut had been opened, and, in the light of the snow, he saw a woman in the room, a woman all in white. She was bending above Mosaku and blowing her white breath upon him. Almost in the same moment she turned to Minokichi and stooped over him. He tried to cry out, but found that he could not utter any sound. The white woman bent down over him, lower and lower, until her face almost touched him, and he saw that she was very beautiful, though her eyes made him afraid. For a little time she continued to look at him. Then she smiled, and she whispered, "I cannot help feeling some pity for you, because you are so young. You are a pretty boy, Minokichi, and I will not hurt you now, but if you ever tell anybody, even your own mother, about what you have seen this night, I shall know it, and then I will kill you. Remember what I have said." With these words said, she turned from him and passed through the doorway. Only then was he able to move. He jumped up and looked around, but the woman was nowhere to be seen. Minokichi closed the door and put a heavy wood piece against it. He wondered if he might have only been dreaming and mistaken the snow light in the doorway for the figure of a white woman. However, he could not be sure. He called out to Mosaku and was frightened because the old man did not answer. He put out his hand in the dark and touched Mosaku's face, and found that it was ice. Mosaku was dead. By dawn, the storm was over. When the ferryman returned to his station around sunrise, he found Minokichi lying in shock beside the frozen body of Mosaku. Minokichi was promptly cared for, but he stayed sick for a long time because of that terrible night. He had been greatly frightened also by the old man's death, but he said nothing about the woman in white. As soon as he got well again, he returned to his job and pretended that nothing had happened. One evening, in the winter of the following year, as he was on his way home, he saw a girl who was traveling on the same road. She was very good-looking, and she answered Minokichi's greeting with a pleasant and kind voice. He walked beside her, and they began to talk. The girl said that her name was Oyuki. She had recently lost both of her parents, so she was going to Tokyo where she had distant relatives who might help her to find a job as a servant. Minokichi asked her whether she was married yet, and she answered laughingly that she was single. They walked on for a long while without speaking. By the time they reached the village, they had become very comfortable with each other, and Minokichi asked Oyuki to rest a while at his house. After some shy hesitation, she went there with him. His mother made her feel welcome and prepared a warm meal for her. Oyuki behaved so nicely that Minokichi's mother took a sudden fancy to her and persuaded her to delay her journey to Tokyo. In the end, Oyuki never went to Tokyo. She remained in the house as an honorable daughter-in-law. Oyuki proved a very good daughter-in-law. When Minokichi's mother came to die 5 years later, her last words praised the wife of her son, and Oyuki bore Minokichi 10 beautiful children, all with very fair skin. The townspeople thought Oyuki was a wonderful person. Most of the women in that village aged early, but Oyuki, even after having become the mother of 10 children, looked as young and fresh as on the day when she had first come to the village. One night, after the children had gone to sleep, Oyuki was sewing, and Minokichi, watching her, said, "To see you sewing there, with the light on your face, makes me think of a strange thing that happened when I was a young man of 18. I saw then somebody as beautiful and white as you are now. Indeed, she was very like you." Without lifting her eyes from her sewing, Oyuki responded, "Tell me about her. Where did you see her?" Then Minokichi told her about the terrible night in the ferryman's hut, and about the white woman that had stood above him, smiling and whispering, and about the silent death of old Mosaku. And he said, "Asleep or awake, that was the only time I saw a being as beautiful as you. Of course, she was not a human being, and I was afraid of her, but she was so white. Indeed, I have never been sure whether it was a dream that I saw or the woman of the snow." Oyuki threw down her sewing, stood up, and shrieked into Minokichi's face. "That woman was me! I told you then that I would kill you if you ever said one word about it. If our children weren't sleeping close by, I would kill you now." She screamed as she melted into a bright white mist and was never seen again. All right, I'm back. And if you listen to the story, I think you can guess that it was pretty difficult English. There are a lot of new words that you have not seen before. I hope it was easy enough for you to understand the general points. If not, please come and talk with me and I'll work with you one-on-one, or you can just watch it again and write down any words that you don't know. So we're going to go over the listening questions and the answers right now. Number 1, what jobs did Mosaku and Minokichi have? They were both wood cutters. Their job was to cut wood. Number 2, why did they stay at the ferryman's hut? They stayed at the hut because a big storm blew in and they had nowhere else to go. Number 3, who comes into the hut? What does she do to Mosaku? And what does she say to Minokichi? So a woman in white comes into the hut, she kills Mosaku, and tells Minokichi to never tell anyone about her. Otherwise, she will kill him. Very scary woman. Number 4, who does Minokichi meet while on his way home, and what does he think about her? He meets a beautiful girl on his way home, and he thinks she is lovely and has a pleasant voice. Her name is Oyuki, right? In the end, what happens between Oyuki and Minokichi? So, as you can probably guess, Oyuki and Minokichi get married, and they have 10 children. They have a lot of kids. At the end of the story, Minokichi tells Oyuki about the woman in white he met so long ago. Then Oyuki gets very angry and tells him that she is the same woman. Surprise! Not really, everyone knows. She wants to kill him but cannot because of their children, so she leaves them forever. So I've actually heard two types of stories about the Snow Woman. One is this version, which is that she wants to kill him but she doesn't kill him. But the other version is that actually she kills him and all of her children. So I think this is probably the nicer story out of the two. Okay, so listen to pronunciation and then we will be done. Okay, last pronunciation. Please repeat after me and be careful about the words that I tell you. So number 1, in the village of Musashi Province, there lived 2 woodcutters. So first, look at this word, village. Village. Okay? And the word woodcutter. Now, I know many Taiwanese, they have a problem with this word wood. Sometimes they say wood, or they just push the W out too much. Wa is very, very soft. And the sound with wood, you have to be careful not to make it too low. You are supposed to make it pretty high. Wood, wood. And the whole word, woodcutters, woodcutters. Okay, so let's try the whole sentence again. Repeat after me. In the village of Musashi Province, there lived 2 woodcutters. Okay, number 2. He was awakened by a feeling of snow on his face. Okay, awakened, awakened. Okay, and then feeling. I know, it's the long E sound, it's quite difficult, but let's try feeling, feeling. So don't start saying the L sound before the E sound. Make sure you say a very strong E sound for feeling. Let's say the whole sentence. He was awakened by a feeling of snow on his face. Number 3, Minokichi was promptly cared for. Look at this word, promptly, promptly. So there's a P and a T, prompt, promptly. Okay, full sentence, Minokichi was promptly cared for. Number 4, the girl said that her name was Oyuki. Yeah, this is a word that you learn very early, name, but a lot of students, they cannot say it correctly. They'll say nem. So be really careful of the A, the long A sound, name. You must say the A sound before you close your mouth for the M. Okay? So don't close too quickly. You have to make that A sound first. Name, name. Once you make the A sound, you can close your mouth for the M. Name. That's okay, right? All right, try this whole sentence. The girl said that her name was Oyuki. Okay, and the last one, number 5. She screamed as she melted into a bright white mist. Okay, 2 words, bright, bright. There's no T, bright. And white is the same. There's no T, white, white. Bright white mist, bright white mist. Okay, let's try the whole sentence. She screamed as she melted into a bright white mist. All right, so this is the story today, Yuki Onna, and as always, you can come back and we have so many more stories for you. See you later. Bye-bye.